make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second, Tony Moore.
And we have a second. All,
Mayor, if we could poll the board with the votes, I will start with Councilman Hines tonight,
Yes.
Councilman Moy,
Yes.
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Robertson,
Yes.
and Councilman Moore.
Yes.
Thank you.
okay, according to the agenda, dinner is next. We will reverse the order tonight. How about that and start over there with Councilman Hines?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Everybody has his
I'm
day.
sitting in the middle, so it don't make any difference.
We do one at a time, like we did last night.
Show me food. Don't show me the food.
How about now? Can you hear me? Well, I'll start all over again then. The reason that Amy's sitting here is going to help me because both of my hearing aids have quit, and I got an appointment tomorrow at, I think it's 11 o'clock at the place to get them fixed. So it's kind of, I have a little trouble hearing, so that's the reason she's sitting here. She's going to punch me and do everything that needs to be done so I can hear.
We just want to make sure you have the help you need, Mayor.
Okay, let's see. Well, item number 6 is item for discussion.
You turning it over to me, Mayor?
Turning it over to Terry? Are you turning it over to town manager?
Oh, yes, I'm going to turn it over to our number 1 person down here tonight.
Well, this wireless mic I had is not working anymore, so I'm going to try to speak in this microphone. Well, good evening once again. Good to be with you all. So tonight I have given you updated budget sheets, both revenues and expenditures. However, I did not have an opportunity because we were literally right up till 5:45 printing budget sheets and making sure it was as good as it could be. So I didn't get a chance to update the budget message, but I'll certainly do that before Monday night. What I'd like to report is that currently the budget is in better shape from a numbers perspective, but I don't feel really good about how we got there. So I'll explain that momentarily. So just one moment. We don't need the budget message. So in your set of sheets that you've been given at your table, I want to go through real quickly the state of each fund. And first we'll start with the general fund. Last night, if I recall, we were out of balance about $1.2 million. And we have been able to balance that budget currently. Now, let me tell you how we did that. So if you'll recall, some of the big ticket items we had in the budget were 3 large pieces of apparatus for public works. That included a leaf vac truck, a knuckle boom truck, and a street sweeper. We did have Travis rank those pieces of apparatus last night. In trying to think about the state of this budget and the state of the budgets moving forward, we currently left those pieces of equipment in the budget, and we offset the purchase with debt proceeds. In other words, we plan to borrow the money to purchase those 3 pieces of apparatus. If we don't do that, what we will find ourselves in is in a budget next year, the year after, when it continues to be tight and the need for this equipment may become an emergency issue as opposed to a planned issue. So we're trying to forego having to purchase a piece of equipment that we didn't plan for. So in the general fund revenues, you'll see a line item called debt proceeds where there's money in that line item that wasn't there last night. I also want to say that you'll see the approved column, town council approved column has been filled in. That is a rollover in the budget process that we went ahead and did in an effort to allow me to see the various iterations between what departmental requests were, which came from the departments. The recommended column is my initial recommendations, and then we're finalizing things in the approved column, and when the budget is approved, that's what the column that will reflect the actual budget. So tonight I would ask you to focus primarily on the column that says approved, even though obviously the budget has not been approved. So again, another large item was the public buildings line item for the sprinkler system to be installed in the fire department. That was doing that off memory, about $130,000. And then obviously the software was the other large ticket item that we discussed at length last night. We plan to try to borrow the money to pay for phase 2 of the software as well, so that we can finish that out and implement the software accordingly. We cut a few things, but we also increased the transfer from electric by $150,000. So you'll see that number has increased from $500,000, which is what it was in this current budget year, to $650,000 for the 2021 fiscal year. That equates to approximately 10% of our electric sales number. And if you look at the revenues for the electric fund, I'm just talking about the sales number, not the other revenue fees that are generated. In addition, we do have a small fund balance appropriation in the general fund in the amount of $130,021 to balance the budget. Now, having said that, this does not this includes keeping the tax rate at 47.5 cents versus the 44.9 revenue neutral rate. We have been discussing the need for, and I have been talking about the need for a tax increase. And that is definitely going to be the case in the next couple of budget years if nothing is done this year. That is to cover the increased cost of the additional personnel that we've brought on board and the additional debt service we're taking on board to cover some of the very necessary pieces of equipment and projects that we currently have in place or plan to undertake in the near future. So with that said, Amy, let me know if I need to repeat anything. With that said, that's why you'll see an increase in the revenue amount. This is on page 2 of the general fund revenue, which are your first 2 sheets. You'll see an increase from the recommended column to the requested column. It went from $9,722,799 to $11,049,493. Again, if you'll recall, when we finance something, we bring in the initial first year of purchase, we bring in the entire debt proceeds to cover the purchase, and then the outlay is the entire amount for the purchase itself. So again, the general fund budget is currently balanced, but it's only using temporary measures. Now, the tax increase that's going to be needed in future budgets, obviously, we talked about 5 cents when we brought up on the 2 large fire grants that we took on. We also added some additional personnel that year. And obviously, we're going to need to cover those things, some additional debt service. But again, the manner with which we address that increase, I would like at some point, whether it's during this budget process or in the future, to discuss how you all address that, because it's got to happen, and there's really no way around it in order to continue to provide the same level of service. Now, currently, we're not recommending any decrease in services, be it solid waste or anything like that. We've talked about it. We've talked about are there ways to provide the service, but maybe not quite as often. We are recommending no changes in that currently to continue. We want to continue to offer the same level, but in order to do that, we're going to need some replacement equipment to ensure that that continues to happen. Are there any questions on the general fund I can try to address? Anthony, you may want to weigh in. I'm not exactly sure that there's a set amount, but I do know that we have tried to initially remain around the 5% arena. Certainly from a comfort standpoint, 10 is a little more than we like, but Anthony, you don't know that the LGC or Utilities Commission sets a max, do you?
Could you, I'm sorry, I'm just having a very difficult time hearing the councilman. What was this question?
The question is, is there a max percentage, a maximum amount of money that can be transferred from the electric fund to the general fund?
I do know that historically there's a percentage that the LGC likes that they have definitely applied to power agency cities, and that's going back because that doesn't apply anymore because the main reason was associated with the debt that they owed to for the power agency. We're not a power agency member. We weren't then and we aren't now. So I think, you know, we have probably a little more leeway than what others may have had historically. But the number 12% sticks in my mind for what they had to adhere to. I'm not sure that others had to follow that same percentage.
Mr. Moore, I think staff's saying they can't hear you, so you might want to pull the mic a little closer to you. Thank you. Anybody else have questions on the general fund? So again, currently we are balanced. However, it is certainly not in a fashion that I would have recommended we get there. So I'll move into the recreation fund, and as I stated last night, that fund was balanced last night. It continues to be balanced this evening. As a reminder, we have basically included most programs at full strength, if you will, assuming that we're going to be able to implement most programs in their full capacity. However, some line items related to things like concessions, I believe that was the example I used last night. We have tried to estimate an appropriate reduction in those line items, both on the revenue and expense side, so that we can try to reflect some of the current circumstances we're currently experiencing with the COVID-19 situation. But again, that fund is currently balanced and totals $1,092,741. I don't think that's on Councilman Hines. Evan, I think Councilman Hines may have a question.
I think they turn off after a while, so you have to turn on back on.
Everybody may want to check their mics.
Yes, sir.
If everyone will give us just a moment, we're having technical difficulties. I'm asking Willie if he could report to the conference room, please. Willie, to the conference room. I sound like I work at a store. Willie has been the saving grace when it comes to some of these technical things. We're having microphone issues, Willie, so I'm not sure why some of these have ceased to work. Yeah, most of them have, I'll call it, timed out.
I thought they were going to sleep. Mine's on.
Hello?
That's me.
Can everybody tap their mics to see? Hello?
Hello, hello, hello. Hello.
Okay.
Thank you, Willie.
Thank you. He's coming back. He's going to get us connected so we don't die out. But I believe Evan is with us and Councilman Hines.
Yes, Evan, my question is for the fall this year. What if we don't have football this year?
Evan, I believe the question was, what if we do not have football this year?
So that's a good question. Football is one that we have a specific revenue and specific expenditure line item.
Right.
Or corresponding line items. Not all have that, but those do. So if we did not have football, then there wouldn't be any expenditures out of the football expenditure line item and no revenues collected for the revenue line item. So, the revenue is not as high as the expenditures. In other words, we know that we don't bring in all the money that we expend or make money on the program, obviously because of the nature of the service, but they would be still, in that sense, a wash.
Councilman Moore, I think everybody's may have gone out again. Hello, I'm on the regular system, but I think Willie went to search for a drop cord.
Evans, can you hear me?
Evan?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, my question is, when do your regular season start for your summer program, usually?
I'm sorry, the regular season for what program?
For T-ball and for your ball season.
So typically, the spring, summer baseball programs, we call them spring, summer. They actually really, some of them start in the winter, but we just call them spring, summer for simplification purposes. T-ball, Pee-wee, registration is February through about mid-March. Practices are the month of April, and games are May through June.
May, you said May and June.
So I believe the question was, when do our summer programs start? I believe everyone heard Evan say usually in May or June. Evan?
Yeah, it all depends on the program. I thought I heard him ask specifically about the T-ball Pee-wee program, so I'm sorry if I answered incorrectly. But yeah, so most of them, spring, summer really includes winter of that year as well. So anywhere from February through April roughly is when most of them start for the spring, summer season, that is.
Okay, I was looking at the amount that we had allotted for those programs. It's right now, we're getting ready to go into June, and the amount that we have is the same amount that appeared to me that we used a lot for at the beginning of the season.
Are you talking about the amounts in the proposed budget, Councilman Moy? Yes. That would be for next spring, correct. The budget year, as you know, goes from July 1st to June 30th. So these would be monies for 2021. Right. So the monies for this current budget year, which is 1920, Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the expenditures and revenues have been collected and expended even though the programs have not begun.
That's correct.
Okay, so why do we need the same amount that we started off with this year and for next year since we haven't had any program?
The budget year for this year ends June 30th. The ball season has not started. For this current year, we plan, as we stated last night, to start resuming practice in June and hopeful if we move into phase 3 at the end of June, that we could begin playing ball in July. But that would be for this current season. So next spring is an entire different season.
And it'll start normal.
Hopefully, it completely depends on the state of the nation and with this whole pandemic situation, but the plan is to start it, we've planned for and budgeted for full spring seasons.
So we are planning on doing a whole season this year, even though we're gonna start late.
It will definitely, there will be some modifications to this season. I don't know what they all entail because it will completely depend on what happens. And Evan, I don't want to speak for you, but it will completely depend on what happens at the end of June.
Yeah, so I think the answer to that question, if you're wondering about the expenditures and revenues for the spring baseball seasons that have been pushed back and either started and were suspended and are getting ready to be picked back up, or we're getting ready to start when the program suspension happened. The answer to the question is most of the vast majority of the expenditures had already come out, and the ones that had not had already been encumbered, so they had come out. They just hadn't been spent. And then the revenues, the vast majority of those revenues being sponsorships and player fees, had all been collected as well. So most of those things, revenues and expenditures, would still be in this fiscal year as they normally would be.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense now, because what you said is, you put the money out, but yet you have not spent it.
Yeah, we've spent the money for a lot of the gear up of our programs for when they start, because a lot of that stuff has to be purchased, expended ahead of time. Field preparation, there's a whole lot of things that go into kicking the season off, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to start the season yet. But our plan is to do the best we can to offer as full of even though it may be an adjusted ball season, but as full of a season as we possibly can. Does that make sense? I just don't think we know. And until June 26th, when phase 2 is scheduled to be revisited, we don't know what can be done, because currently there are still some rules and regulations in place from a state level that would make it inherently difficult for us to play currently. Oh, 2 teams and spectators, and that's what I'm talking about. Practice, if you practice a team at a time, we can make that happen. We don't have microphones, so you may have to speak loud, or as loud as you can. We haven't purchased a lot of the concession items that we would normally need, and therefore, we certainly haven't taken in any money. So concessions are something that may or may not resume at the same time ball does. That completely depends on sort of the state of what's going on, because we also haven't. Right, and it remains to be seen, again, depending on what happens with the season, and those, assuming everyone still wants to play. I think Evan and his staff, and I don't want to speak for you again, Evan, but they're in the process of trying to gear up to determine who's still interested in playing, who's no longer interested in playing, just so we can try to ascertain kind of where we're going once we get geared up. Evan, is that a fair statement?
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
I think Willie's working on the mics. Can y'all see if they're working? Councilman Smith's working. Mayor's working. I don't think Councilman Moore and Ms. Robertson are not working yet.
Testing.
Councilman Moy's working.
Ricky, I'm working.
They're still getting to us slowly but surely.
Eyes back.
I'm not working either, so, on this one.
You all just talk loud, okay? I've had 196 students at a time, so talk loud.
But Councilman Moore, Councilman Hines, everybody, does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine with the answer I got. I just wanted to know,
I'm on.
Okay, great, thank you. Councilman Moore, you may be on now.
that was something that someone called and asked me today.
He's working on you.
You hear me,
Sorry.
Terry and Evan? Just someone had called and asked me today about it.
Sure.
And I was just, saying I didn't know, but, whatever happens. So.
Well, I think and it stands to reason, there are lots of people that would like answers, but I think most folks understand that answers are not something that we can give from a holistic perspective right away. So we're trying to get as much information out in a timely fashion once we kind of know where we are. We're just excited at the prospect to be able to put some kids back out on a field, even if it's in a practice mode and a one-team mode, to get some, that'll feel more like normal than things have been for a while. So we'll at least look forward to that. Evan, did I leave anything out?
Yeah, no, I would just agree with you. We're excited to be able to get kids back out there, playing ball. And I think it's really, obviously we know that the word normal is a bit of a misnomer. We won't be back to normal for who knows how long, but I think that, at least given the opportunity to be able to get back out there, for us and leagues across the state, and country, I guess as well, is something that will add to a sense of normalcy and a sense of, what people are used to. And I think that's important at this time for people all over the place.
I also think it's very reasonable to assume that there, again, could be modifications to season length or the way the season is structured and how it's played. Obviously, those decisions are kind of evolving as we get closer to figuring out what's going to happen next. So we'll continue to keep you informed as things move forward. But Parks and Recreation staff, they're still busy trying to provide online fitness classes, gardening videos, working on some gaming ability for some of these folks who like to do that. I'm not very familiar with a lot of that stuff, so it's a little bit foreign to me, but I gather there are a lot of kids and adults that like to game, to video game, play video games. So we'll be getting information out about that, and we look forward to eventually resuming programs like the senior drop-in program, et cetera. So we're trying.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about recreation? Okay, the next fund is your Powell Bill Fund. We didn't talk about that last night much at all, but the fund is balanced. We anticipate revenues in our annual distribution in the neighborhood of $251,494, and we will have a little bit of interest income. And if you flip to the second page, you'll see that we're going to try to stretch that money as far as we can with some street repair and resurfacing, some patching, some minor stormwater repair, storm drain repair, et cetera. So take a look at that. Please let us know if you have any questions, but please also know that aside from our annual street and repair and resurfacing project, we know and recognize that there may be some large-scale road needs that aren't included in a budget like this. So obviously those aren't planned for currently, but they're never far away from our mind because we realize that eventually there'll be some large undertakings that we have to plan for. Oh, thank you. Mr. Moore, you should be good now. You may have to turn it on. Well,
So,
there you go. Thank you. Okay, so any questions about Powell Bill? Okay, I have included in the budget the vehicle replacement fund sheets. Historically, we've used that to just record, since I've been here, to record debt service that may be due on certain vehicles. Anthony, please jump in if I misstate anything. I think the original intent was under the previous manager, Mr. Wisdent, and because the purpose of the fund never really came to fruition, we don't use it as it was originally intended. However, I do, because there were funds included in the current year budget, I wanted to have that reflected and to show you those sheets. But there are no current or planned funds to be expended out of the vehicle replacement fund in 2021. The next fund is obviously, the one that I want to discuss is the fire grant fund. And you have one sheet that reflects the revenues, and then you have two expense departments behind that. The fire grant fund includes grant funding and some FEMA funding and some general fund contribution. This encompasses the grant that we received, the SAFER grant, hiring grant, and also the SAFER recruitment and retention grant. The 2 pages behind this page show and display the expenditures for both the fire, we call it the positions grant, that include the salary and wages and associated benefits for our firemen and fire engineers that we hired. I don't have my glasses on. Councilman?
No sheet after it.
Yeah. There's no sheet after. It's just that it's,
The one with 4 items.
Yeah, 4 line items.
So we're missing a sheet, evidently.
You may have them in your expenditures, so I have all of mine clipped by fund. So what you may have is you have your revenue bundle, and then you have your expenditure bundle. I've just got mine ordered a little differently, so I may have misspoke. It's not 2 sheets behind the revenues.
Okay.
You'll have to go to the fire fund on the expenditure side.
Yeah.
With the
Sorry
fire-
about that.
With that fire fund, the grant
Ms.
funding-
Robertson, I'm sorry, I can't understand you.
Okay, I'll take this on. The grant funding line and the general fund contribution, your recommendations and what we approve, there's a difference in them. Can you explain that?
Yes, there are some additional line items in the recruitment retention grant. If you'll look at that expenditure side, that needed to have been reflected, that were not originally reflected in the budget submittal, so those had to be added. It included member benefits, fire call pay, contracted services. So a couple of those items in the fund, in the recruitment grant side, which is, it's called fire, then dash recruit grant. There were a few line items that had to be included.
Okay. So that explains why the top line, there's a difference too.
Correct.
In the grant fund.
Yes, ma'am, it's trying to accurately reflect grant monies and then general fund, associated general fund contributions. Anthony or Chief Moore, did I miss anything on that?
No, you got it from my perspective. Those expenditures will still be offset with the, like you said, the grant revenues.
Right.
I think that's it. I will say that recruitment grant is 100% federal funds.
Correct.
Say it again.
The recruitment grant, if you'll recall, was 100% grant funding.
Okay.
So it was the hiring grant that has a percentage grant and then percentage town portion, which the town portion increases and the grant amount decreases over the time of the grant.
And that was, what, over 5 years? What, was it over 5 years?
I believe it's 3 years.
3 years, and it
Chief?
goes
The position grant is 3 years and the recruitment grant is 4 years.
4
Right.
years. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Also, I will reference the fact that the budget cycle is July to June. The grant cycle is February to February. So in a budget year, you will have 7 months at one percentage portion, and the last 5 at an increased portion. So it won't exactly match up with the budget year just by virtue of the grant cycle, if that makes sense. Okay, any questions on that? The next fund is our housing, our urgent repair fund. We have budgeted for $20,000 in as a contribution from general fund, and that money will hopefully be utilized to make some urgent repairs in town. The next fund to talk about this evening would be the electric fund. And if you'll recall, last night, we were about $565,000 out of budget. And we made some adjustments to that budget accordingly. And if you'll go into capital outlay on the expenditure side, those numbers were amended to reflect some work we can try to get done, or at least procure the funding for this year versus next year. Again, as you all know, we've got these large projects going on, and the work is spanning more than one budget year, so we're trying to determine what we can try to procure this year, this current 1920 year, and then we reduce the capital outlay by a proportionate share for next year. That's why you see a reduction from $536,500 to $265,000. To balance the budget, we also included on the revenue side a fund balance appropriation in the amount of $361,227. 150 of that $361,227 is the increase in the transfer to general fund. Does that make sense? Okay, anybody have any questions on that? Currently, that fund is balanced. The next fund that we'll be discussing is the water fund. I believe last night, if I'm not mistaken, that budget was out of balance. I believe, Travis, was it over 200,000? One moment, let me look at my.
$430,000 last night.
That was in.
Yes, ma'am. I think it was like 247,000. Actually, I got it right here.
Hold on, I was looking at my.
267,000 last night.
Well, I've got,
It was actually 437.99.
Oh, you're right. I was looking at sewer.
Yep.
$799.
Right, thank you. I wanted to make sure we had it correct. Well, currently that fund is balanced. Let me tell you how we made that happen. We had $120,000 recommended or requested in capital outlay, which included a replacement on-call truck, booster pump stations, variable frequency drives, and a dip drop down at Main and Mill. We took the entire $120,000 out. Let's see, I'm looking. Travis, jump in. What else?
We also took out that all of the engineering for the water system improvements on the southern side of town, Church Street, Park Road, Old NC 11, and Highway 11. But keep in mind, we applied for funding for 2 of those 3 projects. So even though we had budgeted for the engineering portion of those projects in case we were not awarded funding, but we'll wait and see if we're awarded funding this summer for 2 of those 3 projects, and if so, we can revisit them at that time. We took that was $175,000. We cut all of the capital outlay.
And then in addition to that, Anthony and I worked through some adjustments made in the transfers to general fund based off of borrowing money for some of the the software, which part of that was coming out of the enterprise funds.
And I think the last little bit was just a fund balance transfer.
We do have, well, we have a fund balance appropriation, a small one, in the amount of $53,305 that's included on the revenue side, but that budget is now balanced, proposed budget. Any questions on the water fund? If you'll allow me, I'm going to skip over sewer and go straight to stormwater, because sewer is really the topic of discussion for tonight. So stormwater, that fund is balanced. I think it was $3,000 out of balance last night, which basically I knew we were going to be able to make a small adjustment on the expenditure side, which we've done. But you'll see on the expenditure side, there are projects included for some phase 2 compliance and some engineering pipe replacements and some monies for our stormwater management plan. Travis, I don't know if you have anything you want to say specifically about stormwater.
No, ma'am. Basically, we just budgeted for some generic pipe replacement projects, and as we finish obtaining the easements, we'll complete those projects. You know, in general, stormwater fund, we all know the biggie is Railroad Street, and that's just something that we're trying to work towards eventually being able to complete. Whether, obviously, we're not going to have enough money to pay cash for that, but at least if we can get that fund built up a little bit, maybe eventually we can have a little bit of a down payment or do it in phases. But we've got to continue to keep up with the rest of the infrastructure in other parts of town as we work towards that goal.
Thank you. Any questions on the stormwater fund? Our work for this evening, in addition to anything council wants to work on, remains in the sewer fund. I believe we were over $200,000 out of budget last night. We are down to being $159,847 out of balance. The challenge in the sewer fund is that there are some large-scale projects we've been discussing and have been undertaking now for several years. What I have, let's see, I'm not sure what happened to my overhead. Well, we're just having all grades of technical difficulties. Being the spreadsheet that we've got on the overhead is not displaying.
It's like something that's blocking it.
I know, and I'm not sure what that is. Well,
Well, I mean, that is it there.
you can see it?
I can see it on the shared screen. Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I can see it on my computer screen, but we can't see it on the overhead in here. I'm not sure what that's about.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see something real quick. Bear with me. I can't print from here. What we wanted to do was you may recall.
Terry, give me a second. I'll make a copy of mine real quick for the handout.
Oh, hold on. We may have some traction here. Oh, no. Can y'all see that?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I've got it, Ben.
Okay.
Okay, so folks, what we wanted to do, you may recall that definitely during the vision setting meeting and even, I believe, last year, staff put together a pretty detailed spreadsheet and we talked about the specific projects we have ongoing and those that we need to do in sewer. And we talked about rate structures and the impact of these projects on the rate structures. And we want to go over that again. We want to talk to you about, remind you all what we're currently working on, what we plan to work on, and how the fund itself is affected by these projects, obviously all of which are very necessary. I've asked Ben and Travis to go over this with you and let you know where we are. So Ben, with that said, I'll turn it over to you and Travis.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So if you recall, all of you have seen this spreadsheet at least maybe 3 times. As Terry said, in a couple of budget meeting, vision setting meetings, I went over it individually, just trying to keep everybody abreast of all the projects and the impacts of those projects with regard to the rates and the debt service associated with them. All of these projects are necessary that we've been working on. Some of them are repairing old lines, fixing the leaking areas that cost us money. We pay for every drop that we send out to the treatment plant. So the tighter our system is, the less I&I we have in it, the less we are paying for rainwater and groundwater, which is good. Some of the projects are also setting us up for growth areas and serving areas that council has showed interest and support in growing into and providing utility service within. What I'm getting to is both types of those projects have a return on investment, and they're necessary and very good, beneficial projects. When we look at our water and sewer rates, sewer specifically, we are kind of low when we compare ourselves to other similar systems across the state. Low rates are, when it comes to funding projects, and we are trying to be competitive, we have been told by the funding agency that our rates are kind of low, and we then don't get certain points that would then raise our score, which would then qualify us for more grant assistance rather than the loan assistance. We recently ran into that with the 2 projects that the sewer rehab and the pump station rehab projects that we have ongoing. So to position ourselves where we are more competitive in a very competitive arena with these funding applications, it's wise to set our rates such that not only we can operate and maintain the system as necessary, but also cover the debt service for these projects when they when the debt comes on. Right now, what we are looking at for the 3 main projects that we have ongoing, we have the 2018 sewer rehab project, which is the fixing of the gravity lines throughout town. That is a $3.5 million project.
Ben,
yes, ma'am.
could you do me a favor and go over some of that generalized information at the top?
Oh, so yes, what I've done is for each of our projects, whether it's water, sewer, even new subdivisions, we like to plug in and see what the cost and impacts are going to be for our on the project, and what the debt service is going to be and what the impacts on the rates are going to be. So what I do is I set up a spreadsheet, and it keeps track of the number of customers. It also takes the fixed rate, the variable rates based on our usage, and calculates the average monthly residential bill, as well as the funding agencies like to be able to have a benchmark to compare systems. They like to, for applications, to include what a bill would be for 5,000 gallons per month. So based on our residential customers, when we put this together of about 3,800. We had an average residential usage of about 3,700 gallons per month. With our fixed rates and our variable rates, the average residential bill was about $37.04 with that average usage. Now, for a 5,000 gallon per month residential bill, we're calculating that at $47.97. So the School of Finance at UNC has set up a rate dashboard, and you can go on and you can look at the town of Winterville's rates. Anybody that submits their information to the School of Finance, they create this dashboard so you can go see what your rates are like, compare them to other entities of different sizes, similar sizes. You can even see what a 10% increase would be, or a 50%, or usage, what that would do to bills. So it's a pretty good tool to have at our disposal to kind of compare ourselves and see what the impacts would be. So that's the numbers at the top. Now, when we start looking at the project I was just talking about, 2018 the gravity rehab project, that's a $3.5 million total. $3 million is at 0% interest because we qualified for $500,000 of principal forgiveness. So when we look at that project and we calculate what our principal and interest is going to be for the debt on that project, to cover that cost would equate to about a $3 and just say 50 cents. We're about $3.40, but just for easy numbers to grab, $3.50 increase would get us to cover the debt service on that project upcoming. We also have were awarded for the pump station rehab project, which we are going through the selection of the engineer for that. We actually received the statement of qualifications today and be selecting that engineer to finalize that design. That's a $1.97 million project. We again got $500,000 in principal forgiveness and received the same 0% interest on the remaining balance for the loan. Now, both of these are paid back over 20 years, but we still, once that project is complete, then we take on the debt service. That principal interest payment would equate to a necessary rate increase of about $1.76. And then the third project that council approved is the cost sharing on the Eli's Ridge pump station. Now, this is one, the two previous projects we're talking about fixing what we've got. This Eli's Ridge project is putting us in position to serve a larger area. We're getting a lot of bang for our cost share buck on that one. So we're looking at about $93,000 of cost for that, and that equates to only a 42-cent increase in the average monthly residential bill for our customers. So to go back, we have been told by the funding agency that our rates are low. We've seen it that we've missed our scoring opportunities to then qualify for some grant funds. When you look at the dashboard, our a measuring benchmark that they use is if the sewer bill is more than 1.5% of the median household income, then your rates are not high. They're pretty good. They're getting a little steep when you're getting over 1.5%, and then you're falling into another category that qualifies you for some more funding assistance. We are currently with a 5,000 gallon per month residential bill. We're sitting at 0.79% of the town's median household income. So we've got some room in there with regard to that measuring device. So what we are talking about right now is the need to position ourselves to cover the debt service that's coming up for as a result of these sewer projects. Would like to continue conversation with council about the rate increase, but it then does put us in position to score a little better on some upcoming applications. One thing also that we have, we know just because of historical experience with these funding sources, they like to see an increasing block rate structure. It's a water conservation type measure. Now we will come back and revisit, and that's another discussion. It'll take staff a little bit of time to delve into and evaluate the scenarios and the impacts based on different customer classes and their typical usage and what would be a good rate that is acceptable to us for our needs, council from the political side of things, but as well as the funding agency qualifying at what point do the variable rates increase. When you start talking about increasing block rate, if you increase it at the 20,000 gallons, that's not really an effective rate structure because most residents don't use 20,000 gallons, so they'll never even get into that next block. But that's for discussion at another time after we've done a lot of number crunching. But for tonight and for these projects that we've got going on and coming on the books financially, we are looking at council to consider about a $3.50 increase in the sewer rates.
And I'll just add, certainly the rates playing into future grant applications is absolutely critical, but the bottom line is we've committed to this project. We need this project, and this rate adjustment is to cover the debt associated with this project.
Travis.
This debt next 20 years, and we cannot afford to pay for the project without a rate adjustment.
Travis, when you say this project, you're referring to the 2018 sewer rehabilitation project?
Yes, ma'am. That's the 2018 sewer rehab project. And remember, that's $3 million approximately at 0% interest and $500,000 of grant money. And the same can be said for the 2020 sewer pump station rehab project, which is only approximately $1.9 million. But again, that project consists of $500,000 in grant money and the remainder, which would be about $1.4 million at 0% interest. But we don't anticipate the debt service for that coming on until 2 years. So there should be a year in between the debt service for this 2018 sewer rehab project and the 2020 sewer rehab project.
As I stated earlier, it's these two projects, the big ones, are fixing what we've got. There is a return on that investment. The most recent project that was completed, Gravity Sewer Rehab, that project was kind of large and spread out, one long run along Cooper Street, but there was just one hole that we fixed on Forbes Avenue that prevented about 100,000 gallons a day of groundwater coming into our system. And you multiply that by 365 days per year and by the amount that we pay down at CMSD, that turns into some real money. And that project, has shown great benefit in our numbers at that station there. Are there any questions?
Thank you, folks. I wanted to also ask Anthony to weigh in on the status of the fund balance available to spend in sewer. As you know, sewer is a fund that we have worked diligently on year after year to try to get it in better financial shape. unlike some of our other funds, sewer struggles right along with general fund in terms of it being a challenge to budget it every year. So Anthony, would you talk about the state of our current fund balance in the sewer fund?
Sure. Currently, well, as of June 30th, we had 318,000, but we've appropriated 102 of that during the year. So we're currently at $216,000 $216,695 in fund balance, which is, that's only 9%. So you can tell it's one pump station problem could eradicate most of that pretty quick.
I wanted you all to hear the status of the fund balance situation, to know why I just didn't take a fund balance appropriation and balance the budget with it. We really, I have told you every year, I believe we really need to keep on top of these adjustments to try to address some of the large-scale projects that we have to undertake in order to continue to move forward in a positive way. And I think that staff we've done everything we can do to try to balance the budget to the best of our ability, and what we bring you tonight is still 150,000 plus out of balance. Anthony, did we implement an increase year before last?
1 second.
And how much was it, Anthony?
Yes, let's see, looking back over our rates, we had an increase from, so just make sure I'm kind of looking back over time here. We had an increase from, in 2018 to 2019 fiscal year, we went from $26.83 in the base rate to $30.83. And let's see, the rest of it, so the variable cost with those rates stayed the same at $8.57. So we increased the flat rate to cover some debt service that came on in 2019. Prior to that, you have to go all the way back to 2015. And that increase was from $23.34 to $26.56. So roughly a $3 increase in between the years 14, 15, and then between 18 and 19, roughly $4. Well, exactly $4.
Councilman Moy, does that give you what you needed to know?
Yes, but those increase was basically for the upgrade that we needed down to Griffin, is that correct, down to the subs?
These were not CMSD specific. These had to do with projects and adjustments we needed to make for our collection system. Now, having said that, many of the projects and the associated debt service for CMSD is included in our annual allocation that we paid to them.
Okay.
So we've got our own debt service, and then obviously we've got our proportionate share of the debt service for the improvements at the wastewater treatment plant.
So
Terry, wasn't the debt service for the CMSD plant expansion, didn't that come on, was that the 2015?
That's what I
Around
was
then?
thinking. I wasn't sure.
I don't recall the exact year, Councilman Smith, I don't know if you do, but
I can't remember last week.
I'm right there with you. But it's been within the last few years, yes. But keep in mind, I mean, that's a two two-faceted approach that a lot of places who have their own treatment plant, I mean, it would just be all combined, basically, if we treated our sewer here in town. So it's basically the same approach. It's just the second half of our process happens elsewhere.
Based on the information here that we have, our sewer rates are the lowest for the cities, you know, Aden, Farm. This sheet
Councilman
goes back
Moore.
and forth. I was in the back and forth comparing rates. And if we were to raise our rates by $3.50, we'd be at $47.29, which still would only make us 25 cents above Greenville, which would be lower than ours then.
You say we'll be above Greenville?
What was that comment there?
25 cents above Greenville.
I believe Councilwoman, Mayor Pro Tem Robertson stated that if we implemented the increase, that we would only be 25 cents above Greenville's rate currently.
That is correct. We'd still be cheaper than the other entities that we compare ourselves to in our budget book. But keep in mind, I believe, I'm not speaking for them, but I would venture to guess that GUC might be increasing their rates as well in the near future. They've got some projects going on as well.
I think you'll find that many entities are in the same boat, and we're all trying to figure out how to stay progressive, how to stay moving forward, but at the same time, pay for the cost of doing business. And sewer is never, ever, I've been in this business 30-plus years, never been a moneymaker, not sure it's ever going to be a moneymaker. So it's always one of the more challenging funds to try to keep in good financial shape.
It sounds like if we were to increase our rates, that it would work for the town in two ways. We would be paying for our service, but we would also put ourselves in a position that when we apply for loans and grants, it would give us a more favorable position with the LGC.
Well, definitely, there is an expectation that your need is based on,
It's kind of bad that you got to be that way, but.
well, they want to make sure that you have skin in the game, and in order to do that, they want to see your rates at a certain level to make sure that the need is there, particularly for grant monies. And obviously, Ben, I think you can probably expand on this better than I, but I think competition for any monies that are available, be it low interest, no interest, et cetera, the competition is probably as severe as it's ever been.
That's correct. We were very close in the recent application from getting a large portion of that as grant. Councilwoman Robertson, Mayor Pro Tem Robertson, to address the change that we're talking about tonight with the 350 would position us better. It would not check off all of the boxes with regard to that border conservation or that increasing block rate structure on the variable rate side of things, as well as the total bill. I'd have to go back and double check. We were kind of close, but I'd have to go back and double check and see what that line is for us to be at in order to score in the next category to get more points, or to maximize, I should say, our potential points in that category.
Well, to me, it sounds like we do what we're supposed to do and we get penalized. And the towns that don't do what they're supposed to do are the ones that receive the grants.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with median household income and ability to repay, et cetera. Obviously, that, I'll call it structure for the way, particularly where utilities are concerned. It's been that way for a long time. However, we are growing. The only way to keep costs down as much as possible is to bring on more customers to spread that cost across the board.
If I can, Councilman Hines, that's correct, you know, and we've talked about this, that
Yeah.
you get punished for good behavior and rewarded for bad sometimes. There are 5 criteria that they look at with regard to affordability and then being qualifying for the principal forgiveness or the grant money or the state reserve money that is out there and allocated for these types of projects. We don't really have control over the median household income.
Right.
We don't have control over our poverty rate, but the one thing that we do have control over, which is one of those items in there, is the residential bill compared to the median household income. So that is one thing that we can work on and have some control over.
Councilman Moore, you may want to push your power button before you start talking.
Oh, I thought that was enough. Earlier I asked about how much that property value has increased this past year.
Yes. Anthony, Councilman Moore wants to know if you could speak to valuation increases for Winterville.
Sure. The valuation went from $822 million to $890,556,000. That's a $68,514,000 valuation change.
But in neutral, you know, rates, Patrick only get down about 3 cents.
Correct.
3 cents went to $40,000.
The change, the revenue neutral also includes a growth. It factors in our growth rate over the past 3 years, including valuation. So that growth rate would have been $100,000.
Did everybody get that information? All council members? Okay. I welcome any input and/or direction on how council wants to move forward with the sewer fund.
If it were increased to the $3.50, would that put it at 1%?
1%.
Income. It was stated that the LGC basically says that our rate needs to be close to 1% of our median income.
Hold on, let me check that real quick. I think I still have that pulled up.
So I think the target was 1.5%. We were at 0.79 currently.
You said it's supposed to be, they like for it to be at 1.5, and we're at 1.79?
We're at 0.79.
0.7.
And the mark, the threshold there is at 1.5. The dashboard does not allow me to change. Oh, hold on one second here. Let's see. It's going to.
Raising
Straps over touching my iPad and sent me somewhere. I don't have that in front of me, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm gonna have to go double check that, and I can get those numbers of what our rate would have to be to meet that 1.5% of the median household income.
Again, as a reminder, as we continue to undertake these larger projects, there are adjustments that are calculated and attached to each project. We feel like that's a fair and appropriate way to present it to you so that you know what the effect of each project has on our rate structure.
Okay, I think I have an answer. So when we're looking at both water and sewer at the 1.5% of the median household income, we would, and this is just general terms, we would have to increase both the total bill of the combined water and sewer bill at 5,000 gallons of usage. We'd have to have a 20% increase to go past, to get slightly above the 1.5% of the median household income. That would raise, like I said, 20% would be the increase to make that mark. And I believe the $3.50 is going to get us close to 10% just in the sewer side of things, right?
I never really thought silence was a bad thing, so I'll patiently wait.
Well, here go more. Terry, I do believe that you have really researched and looked diligently into this budget. And I think that you had brought it down as lean as possible. You know, with the economy like it is right now, we have so many people unemployed. And I know that service that we provide does not go, it's not put aside and have to wait until the economy come back up. Everything still have to be paid for. My point is if there is any way that you can go back and look and see, can you find other ways and means besides an increase into this sewer?
If that's what you all direct me to do, that's what I'll do. I certainly am mindful and understand the current situation we're in and how that could potentially impact us moving forward. I don't bring these numbers to you lightly. It's not, I think I stated it in the beginning of the meeting, it's not the way that I want to balance the budget. And I understand that increases are something that this council, rightfully so, struggles with. If you all want me to go back and research, I'll do the best I can.
Terry, if I may, one obvious way to cut it would be to cut the projects. Now, as I said earlier, these projects are necessary. We have in our hand a great financing opportunity for it. Prices we saw pre-COVID were climbing substantially annually. I don't foresee a project of this nature ever being cheaper. And the having the bird in the hand is better than trying to go for the two in the bush kind of thing. So I just wanted to share that with council as well.
And I think that's my feeling, Ben, because I understand where you're coming from, Councilman Moore, but at the same time, if we keep putting and cutting things, the systems are going to keep getting worse, and then we're going to be in a situation that we're going to have to make a decision an emergency decision to fix things, and it's going to cost us more. And I'm in favor of the 350, so. I know times are tight, and, I think that's why we as council, sometimes we got to make tough decisions, But at the same time, we want to make sure the town is operating right. And so I will put a motion out there that we raise it to 350.
Councilman Hines, you stated that in form of a motion.
Yes.
This is Veronica. I agree with Councilman Hines. I know that those sewer projects that we've got going are necessary for our community. We've got water standing, we got things that we don't want to get to the point that we have a failing system. And I think the citizens will understand that. And looking at the chart and looking where it would put our rates, which is still, below our neighbor, and right at the present time we have the lowest rates, but it would put us still just barely above them. It seems like that's pretty much what we need to do in this area. So I will second your motion.
I believe we have a motion and a second, Mayor, to increase the sewer rates by $3.50. And I will ask for the council's vote now. I'll start with Councilman Hines.
I got a question.
Oh,
I'm
I'm so sorry.
Yes, I just want to.
I forget to ask for discussion.
Discussion. I'm not saying that I'm against the increase. There is a need. And I'm not saying the projects that has been presented to us tonight that we need not to do. I was just saying that if there is something else into the budget that we already have besides, because I think this right here is very, very important. What comes in, you got to come back out to a degree, and sewage system is very important to our community, for our citizens, to this town. But I was just saying that if she could go back and look at some other things that really could help us out to offset the increase. That's where I'm at. And I will support the increase if, after we look into a to look at it a little bit closer to see if we can be able to lean this budget down a little bit more, so we can be able to support this project without an increase. Basically, that's where I'm at with it.
Councilman Moy, if I may, I will tell you that I could make some small cuts. There is not $159,000 worth of cuts in that budget. The large-scale amounts, personnel, obviously operating monies to replace and repair things like the pumps, which we've had an inordinate amount of those, obviously, since the whole pandemic started. And then the two items we have in capital outlay is a closing fee it's a required closing fee for our 2018 sewer project, and the payment for the Eli's Ridge cost-sharing agreement, which you all just approved. So I can't cut those out because we have to move forward with those. I just want to be very honest. I could make some cursory cuts, but it would not equate to where we are in terms of our deficit. And just as a reminder, I can't take, if I took $159,000 out of the just over $200,000 sewer fund balance, that would leave us basically with just a few dollars, literally, in the fund balance.
Okay.
We have a motion, if I understand it right, and a second.
That's correct, and We're in discussion.
In discussion. We're in discussion.
Are we in discussion? I thought, is there any more discussion?
In one of the workshops that I attended, they were saying that the rates would have to be closer to the cost in order to fare favorably as far as your application is concerned. Like being said, I know it's only one of the factors, but I think it's a big enough factor for us that we can get these projects underway. Nobody wants to increase, none of us do. We all live here and we know I know very well what it can do to your bill when your water, you have a leak or something and your bill goes up. That sewer rate eats you up. So I do understand that.
All the people unemployed, but all the people waiting for unemployment. Not even 50% of people apply have gotten their money yet. Waiting weeks, months for their money. I wouldn't want to put any more burden on anyone in this family. It's not fair. They need to at least report it. Think about 30 million people in America unemployed. But don't keep them unemployed. You don't have a double check. Government makes money, businesses don't always have that money. I speak from the heart of other people. They'll look carefully what we charge people.
But we also have to take responsibility for hazards in our community. And sewer problems can be health hazards in our community. We need these projects in our community to keep it a safe, viable place to live. We say one of us a slice of the good life. We want to keep it as a slice of the good life. These sewer projects have been going on for a period of time. We know that they're needed. We realize the consequences of doing nothing. So I feel that this is something that needs to be done to the point of this small increase that we're talking about.
Said from a person that the government check coming every month. I don't have that check coming every month. I was a school teacher. I did not retire. I don't have a guaranteed money. I could say that if I had guaranteed money every month. It's not guaranteed. My wife has that guaranteed money. I don't have it.
Mr. Moore, those of us who have it, we use it to pay our bills with. My standard of living is way below yours, so therefore, I don't think that this would even bother someone like you. I'm glad for what I got. I thank God every morning when I wake up. I thank God that I've got a place to live, and there are lots of people around Winterville the same way. But if we have sewer backing up in our homes, we're not going to have a good place to live. If we have failures that some towns and stuff are having, we also. Our rates right now are lower than any other municipality in Pitt County. And that even with the small increase that we're talking about, our rates still will be only second from, well, based on what the rates are now. We know that other towns are also grappling with these same problems. And we don't know what may come out of their budget process, but we know we want to keep our community a good place to live for ourselves and our children. And as far as a reference to those of us who get government checks, yes, I do. I've earned it. I worked 35 years plus for the benefits that I do have. And I know that I don't do as well as you do, but I'm thankful for what I got.
I worked in the sewer. I had a wire truck. Town bought from me. I've been in the sewer, been in every department this town has. I had a $125 vehicle one time, working with the town, that I used every day. Carried 17 individuals, ran to work with you. Again, I didn't vote myself a raise last time about 50%. I stand, that's all I say. I voted against that raise.
Call for the question.
Any further discussion? If my math is correct, the increase is $350 per month.
Yes, sir.
That's $42 a year. I believe most people probably throw away more than $42 a year. Okay. If no further discussion, we have the motion and a second. All in favor?
Mayor, we need to poll the board for their votes. I'll start with Councilman Hines,
Yes.
Councilman Moy,
No.
Councilman Smith. No. Mayor Pro Tem Robertson
Yes.
and Councilman Moore.
No.
Okay, with that said, the vote to increase the sewer rate fails. And I would ask for direction in how you would like me to try to balance this budget.
I would like, again, to ask if you would go back and look at it a little bit closer, see if you can lean it out a little bit more so we can have the projects done.
Does that include delaying the projects? Because that would have to be a realistic consideration.
Well, and Terry, if I may, there's not really a delay, it's notifying the funding agency that we are giving back the money and just skipping the project.
I was being too kind in my statement, but you're right in what you say. And as a reminder, that money, could you break it down and whether there's any principal forgiveness?
Yes, that was one where we got $500,000 in principal forgiveness and $3 million at 0% interest over 20 years. And just with the low interest loan at just say 2% over 20 years at $3 million, that's quite a bit of money too that we were not having to pay for that.
And working with grants.
So that was savings right there, over and above the $500,000 in principal forgiveness.
Okay, my question then is, how long will it take you, Ms. Terry, to go back and look at the budget again and see can you lean it a little bit better than what it is? So we can get these projects done?
Honestly, to give it the full-scale review, to make sure that I've gone through it to the nth degree, a half a day.
Okay. And Ben, do you have to have an answer to your question? You know, you don't have to turn that grant back in within the next few days.
No, but what we have to do is have an answer to how we're going, what kind of budget we're having the public hearing on. Right. And that's Monday night.
And on that particular project, we have already, this project has been designed, so we are bound to the engineering costs that have already been expended on that.
So let me make sure that I'm correct. I'm hearing correctly here. Now, our vote right now has the town is turning back in $500,000 because that was principal forgiveness, and $3 million that we could have had financed over 20 years, because we're not going to raise our rates $3.50 for our citizens. So our citizens, seems to me like our citizens are taking a great loss.
I just want to be specific. That is a possibility. That is not what I am stating. Obviously, I would want to go do a full review, make sure I haven't missed anything, made a mistake. I want to make sure I give you the full answer, but that is a possibility.
And how many staff hours have been put into writing this grant? I know that I went to one meeting that they had at Pitt Community College about grants of this type that we've spent in writing and securing these monies that we have here, this $3.5 million. How many, I wonder how much staff time has been put into this, along with the $3.5 million that we're in danger of losing, I'll say that.
The amount of time it took to put the project together, the number of times staff has talked about how to fund the project, et cetera, the time we spent talking with council about the project in various meetings. I mean, I would say it's fairly substantial. I don't have a number of hours, but it's certainly a project of that size. A $3.5 million project is not something that is easily put together.
Terry, if I may also add another piece of information, and at the December council meeting, the council approved and adopted a resolution and accepted the offer by the state. So we had that offer and acceptance, and we accepted that offer. So I'll have to go back and look at that, knowing that the debt service on this particular project does not come on this fiscal year. However, as you explained to council, we have that deficit currently, but this positions us to be ready to pay for the debt service when it comes on likely next fiscal year.
Thanks, Ben. Councilman Moore, I believe you were going to.
We spent additional $130,000 on one project this year, came out of the budget for the project we did not plan. That could have been money here. Plus,
Could you remind me which project you're referring to? I would just remind you that's a different fund. Well, we don't move general fund monies into an enterprise fund. That is not how the local government commission and our auditors, these enterprise funds are supposed to stand on their own accord. Now, you can transfer money between enterprise funds, but general fund transfers to enterprise funds are usually a no-no. I'm sorry?
We don't have a bad problem. COVID-19 problem. We do have that problem.
And
We got people unemployed.
Yes, we do.
And I've told many times, my income is $43.50 a month. They haven't done that.
Well, many of us have come from small beginnings, and we've gotten to where we are now, and we look back, we're very thankful for that. I know this morning I was informed that our community was one of the only communities that applied for funds from the county, which I would like to applaud staff for doing that.
I have to give staff credit. That was a short turnaround time, but we knew that if we didn't ask, we certainly wouldn't get it. So kudos to staff on that.
I do appreciate their diligence in doing that for our community.
Last time this board, not this big board, voted 4-1 years ago to give away Enterprise or Rescue Squad. Gave it to the county. The fact that I passed the state, I keep it in this mistakes I made. I think about the Rescue Squad. We could have kept some town in the money maker. So we gave it to the county task force. We hadn't looked at that. I
What-
will compliment our public works. We want to use more water. That was a good idea. But I wanted to do it a long time ago. I think that's a good idea. And water, the papers don't know, we can even use even more. I know we got a contract with Greenville, I realize that. But, I know you can move money around. This is a terrible time we're having. People are scared to get out of the house.
And I'd like to just state for the record, in no way, shape, or form does this discussion mean that I have taken any of that lightly. We have worked diligently to try to make the impacts on the community, lessen them as much as possible. So staff doesn't take it lightly at all. We understand.
And it really frightens me, the impact of this project not getting started in our community with the problems that I've heard from our Public Works Department, where they've gone down and looked at the pipes under the ground. Of course, I did which was good for me to be on CMSD board for a little while. I learned a lot about sewer from them and the things that are going on in our communities there. And it bothers me that we can't get this money and get it started here in our community. I would like to see this done. This sewer project is a major project, it's a big project, but it's needed in our community.
Holes in front of my house, from my sewer, the dentures, bump. I got 3 large bumps right in front of my house. That been fixed? My house been there 110 years.
Well, I'm quite sure it,
My house is not down in front of my house. You got to roll up down the road, bump, going down. Put a permit there.
And
Well,
this
excuse me.
2018 sewer rehab project, if I do recall, would include fixing that particular area there in front of your house. If I may also just be able to just add another piece of information for y'all's consideration. As I talked about earlier, tightening up our system prevents flow down to CMSD. We pay for CMSD, we pay for their expansions.
Right.
If we tighten up our system, that's less flow they're having to treat. That delays any type of expansion that may be necessary down there, and that cost that comes back to us. Also, by maintaining our pumping and flow capacity within our system, we are able to take on more homes and users should we eat up our capacity by not doing these types of projects and allowing groundwater and rainwater to fill up our system and our pump stations. We wind up positioning ourselves possibly to have to enter into a moratorium limiting the construction of homes in our area, as well as entering into an SOC, or a special order by consent, which is a document or a process by which we are then held by the state required to do these types of projects within a particular amount of time, regardless of how much they cost.
Well, I'd just like to thank Ben and Travis also for taking me out by me being new on the council at first and getting my shoes muddy, seeing the problems firsthand. And that's the reason why, like I said earlier, I mean, we as a council, we're going to have to make some hard decisions. And if you get out with the staff and walk the grounds and see the projects and see what's going on, I think it helps you make a better determination how you want to vote. But for me, I thought that was pretty good for me, being able to seeing firsthand what the town needs, not just only in their department, well, in Travis' department also. I've done it with Robert, and I haven't done it with Evan so much because I'm always around the recreation department. So when I come here to make a vote, it's not that I'm just making a vote. I've done my due diligence to go out and see, for the citizens. I'm not just making a lame duck vote. I'm making a decision that I'm seeing what they are telling me what the town needs. So as also too, working on the federal side and seeing giving back money, grant money, that's oh man, that's a no-no, because when funding cycles comes around, they want to make sure you spend every dime that you get in order when you come back through, it makes it easier for them to help you out. So, but that's just me.
Well, I never said that I was against the project. Only thing I said that I do believe this is a bad time for the increase, and it is, for our citizens. And I know the importance of this project. Only thing that I asked, if our town manager would go back and look at it, and then I was directed that we need to have this done by our next meeting in June, by June 8th. Is that correct?
June 1st, we have our public hearing. So we normally try.
June 1st, public hearing?
June 1st is the public hearing. I believe I stated it would take me half a day to look through the budget in detail, which would be tomorrow.
Okay.
And so we will have to come back and vote on this, right?
Well,
Before
I
you
mean,
take it to the public
you don't
hearing?
necessarily vote,
I
but
mean, well-
I'd just like to know how we're going into the public hearing.
Right.
And, I mean, you could technically have a public hearing on an unbalanced budget, but just kind of trying to get our ducks in a row for how we move forward for Monday night.
Right.
It would, with my vote not a lame duck vote either. My vote is for the concern of my family, for this town, and for the citizen, for everyone in here. I believe that it's important to speak out and to speak for the ones can't speak for themselves here tonight, and especially the ones that, like Mr. Moore said, has not even received the unemployment. We don't know how long this pandemic is going to be. It's standing a chance to get worse, and here we are talking about increasing. If we can go back and check and see if we can lean this budget a little bit more, I do believe we can get by without an increase and still have the project. That's my belief. And I would like for us to come back if the town manager is willing to go back and see if she could lean a little bit better, call us back, and I'd like to see a report or hear her report. I think that we need to do all we can do before we do an increase.
So you would like to see this added to the agenda for the meeting, the public hearing on the budget? You just like to see this, like, you know, added as an item?
Well, actually, what I would be prepared to do is just give you a report in writing, obviously, first, but then it would be discussed in public, at the public hearing.
Okay.
So,
That's what you like, Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Do we need a motion or anything?
Do you need a motion on that?
I'm thinking, actually, I probably would like a motion on that. A vote on that, please.
I'd like to make that motion at this time.
Councilman Moy, would you restate the motion, just so that we're all clear on what that is?
Okay, that you would go back and look at the budget and see if we can come up with the funds for this project without increasing our sewer.
And would it be okay to say that I will report back to council tomorrow, my findings by the end of business, and also be prepared to discuss it further at Monday night's public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Veronica Robertson, I'll second that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Yes, I second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Mayor will poll the board, asking Councilman Hines.
No.
Councilman Moy.
Yes.
Councilman Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Robertson.
Yes.
And Councilman Moore.
Yes.
Okay, the vote on the motion passes 4-1. I will get back looking at the budget in the sewer fund tomorrow and have a written email back to council before the end of business. With that said, I only know, well, I don't think I have anything else to present tonight, and I don't know if council has anything else they'd like to say.
Why don't we get this part here?
Just go in your booklet.
I'm sorry? Yes, sir, they're the updated budget sheets. Yes, sir, if you'll see at the bottom, it says draft is up to today. Yes, sir. Mayor, I believe I don't have anything else, so
Do you hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
that's Councilman Moore. Thank you. Councilman Hines seconding the motion to adjourn. Mayor, if it's all right, if there's no discussion, I'll ask for the vote. Councilman Hines? Councilman Moy?
Yes.
Councilman Smith? Mayor Pro Tem Robertson?
Yes.
And Councilman Moore? Thank you.